go. We've
It's
arrived.
The Real Deal with Bill McNeil.
We've arrived.
News radio reference for the 4 people who watch that
Yeah,
show.
Man. With Jimmy James, the man so nice they named him twice.
God, that show was so good.
That show was peak.
If I don't
lot of
put my
actors.
coffee cup down the whole time, does that make me Dave Foley from that show? Is that...
That was Dave Foley when everyone else from Kids and All hated him because he was Mr. Richman Dave Foley and he was getting all kinds of tail.
I like the fact that it was the last time I saw Dave Foley in something where I didn't see his day. I thought that was nice.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to another the GRIMDARK Media, where we are doing our Fallout recap, Amazon Prime's Fallout. You're just saying it's the most watched Amazon Prime show of all time. Number 2, after the surprise reveal that Rings of Power was somehow more watched than The Boys and Invincible and all of the other Prime things that got made, Miss Mabel and all that stuff.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that because I don't like. Again, we were just talking about it. I don't know what I expected the most watched show to be, but it wasn't Rings of Power.
Not Rings of Power. No.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of other Amazon.
And this isn't even like a statement about its objective quality. It's just like I feel like this was a niche within a niche that came 15 years too late.
Yeah.
So
I was super surprised too.
I'm surprised that was a big deal.
So we're doing episodes 5 and 6 today. So if you haven't watched them, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about all the show and
apparently
how
we spoiled half of episode 5 last time.
We did.
So.
We blended the end of 4 with the beginning of 5, which no one pointed out in the comments. So we were super. This is like the most not internet-y thing.
Yeah,
ever.
really.
We didn't do that. So we're gonna do a recap.
I'm just gonna start saying stuff like the Earth is flat.
Yeah.
Just to see if we don't
chemtrails.
We're just not getting called out on anything.
We're demonetized immediately. I don't want to get demonetized by Google. All right, so let's do episode 5. So this is where we blended, and then we'll kick into I think what actually is the more important part of this episode, which is the sojourn to Vault 32.
Yeah,
kind of the big thing.
So this episode focuses more on some of the secondary characters. So first, let's just go back a second, just to cover what we're going to pull forward
where
from
we're at.
our last episode. So this is actually the episode that we referenced when we were talking about episode 4, where Thaddeus gets branded.
Yeah, there's the bonding.
They have their big fight, all that stuff. So episode 4 has ended, as we mentioned, or
Super Duper Mart
ended and started with everybody kind of going in their separate directions.
And Thaddeus and Maximus have the head now. They've got the head. The ghoul is basically recovering from his whatever his ghoulitis is, where he's lost his medicine.
So he's gone back into the Super Duper Mart.
And our vault dweller Lucy has become the real survivor. She's in her like vault survivor gear now. Her armor.
Yeah, we are now watching someone play Fallout.
Yeah, she just hit level 5.
Exactly. But again, this episode 5, The Past, focuses on, why do I keep forgetting his name? It's Chet, but I forget her brother's name all the time. It starts with a D.
Oh, it's I just had it in front of me. His Chet and cousin stuff Chet with
Norm. It's Norm.
No, Norm and Chet. Yeah. Norm
so Chet. I don't know why I keep forgetting her brother's name. So Norm and Chet. So the main reason that it's
kind of kicked off by the fact that Norm is now taken care of, and Chet, he's been kicked off. One's been kicked off the door for letting Lucy out, and the other one's being punished by having to feed the raiders.
So Chet basically has no job and nothing to do except spend all of his time in his room with his new wife, who she clearly just needs a replacement for her husband who was killed during the raider attack.
Yep.
And if you ever wanted to know what a super unhealthy but outwardly possibly functioning relationship looks like, it's these two characters.
It's amazing,
right? Like this
reminds me of the Kill Bill character with the eye patch. What was her name? That actress. She's got
Daryl Hannah.
She's Daryl Hannah.
Yeah,
in Kill Bill.
she's got that.
She's got that menace, like that slow menace, where you're like, she seems really happy, but she's not actually happy.
There's a certain maybe, because we'll get to that. But yeah, there's a certain kind of Stepford Wives quality to it. And Chet, throughout the entire show so far, has probably been portrayed as one of the, he's not stupid, but he's been portrayed as one of the least intelligent characters. But even he's starting to get that tickle in the back of his neck where he's like, something's not right.
He's Dauber from Coach.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a good Dauber from Coach reference for all you guys.
Keeping it all current with Coach, news radio. Tune in for all your mid-90s TV shows.
We know our audience. That's the thing,
exactly.
we know our audience. We're speaking to our people.
So Norm has gotten tweaked by some of the raiders that he's been feeding. That, you know, things in the vault are not as they seem, or things in the vault they came from are not as they seem.
Yeah, and after the attack, they're kind of just questioning everything, right? Like,
yeah, and Norm is clearly a very intelligent character.
Yeah,
and he's already had a lot of questions about how, why. You know, he doesn't have kind of the outward the bravery that Lucy does, which he cops to in like the first or second episode.
He's more like intellectually curious, and like you could already tell his dissatisfaction before Lucy even leaves. Like he's already kind of cynical and like checked out.
But when she leaves, like he even references directly to her that he's too much of a coward to follow her.
Yeah. He'd go, but exactly.
But yeah, he's not really a coward. He's just, you know, the world outside is scary, I'll say. So anyway, so Chet and Norm, Norm decides to explore Vault 32 and Vault 33, and Chet decides that that's a way to not be trapped in his incredibly small apartment with his incredibly weird and off-putting wife.
That's right. Yeah. So with his slightly robotic and weird.
So wife. Chet is basically willing to risk life and limb to not be with his wife and inherited child.
It has like a weird what's the term? It has a weird sort of like it's like a Master Blaster vibe. With the two of them, like one's the body, the other one's the brain.
It's funny that you said Master Blaster because I think it's funny that your parallel is Master Blaster.
Yeah.
Because the fact that he's willing to risk life and limb, he's the most physically capable character we've seen so far, with the possible exception of Cooper.
Yeah.
And he has no hope for his life ever getting better. I actually thought he was post-apocalyptic Al Bundy.
That's really funny.
That was my immediate go-to when he's like, "Yeah, whatever. I'll go explore the vault with you, man.
Yeah.
I just need to get out of this apartment." I'm like, "Dude, you're Al Bundy. You're like 29-year-old Al Bundy.
Doesn't want to be in this place at all. I got to get out of here. I'm freaking out right now. This chick's driving me crazy."
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
So they head into Vault 32 first.
And I gotta say, the set design, this is where, because remember we were complaining in the beginning, and it kind of looked like a Capital One commercial. It was very bright and like super lit. When they go into Vault 32 is the moment it looks the most like the video game for me. Like it looks like a Fallout vault all of a sudden.
Yeah, so this is Vault 31 looks kind of like Vault. Sorry, I always forget now. Is it 101 or 111? Which is the vault from Vault?
It looks like Vault 101.
Yeah, so it looks like Vault 101.
It's bright, it's well lit.
But every Fallout game you've played, at some point you discover some other vault that didn't go as well as Vault 101. Yeah. And this is that moment. So they go into the vault and it's overgrown. And you kind of saw signs of that when they first opened the door the first time and the people came out.
Yeah.
But very briefly and very faintly. So they go into the vault and they're kind of poking around, and it almost instantly they realize this isn't recent. Like the place is overgrown, it's destroyed. Like the Raiders haven't been here since the start of the show that we've been watching. They've been here for a long time.
Yeah, and they've been able to get in here for a long time. Yeah. Like this place is jacked up because the bodies they find too aren't recent.
They find bodies. There's stuff overgrown everywhere. There's, I don't know what they are, Los Angeles tumbleweeds, whatever the hell the crap that's growing everywhere is. The place is messed up, and really quickly they realize, no, something's
wrong.
Something's gone wrong here a long time ago, and like this has been in play for a long, long time. So anyway, they kind of start poking around. They find, again, they find some dead bodies. They find a few things that sort of plant the mystery that something's going on. But the next clue, which is, I'm going to skip ahead from the other characters, but the next clue that something's really wrong,
right,
is when the new overseer decides that they're going to move people into the vault because they need to repopulate the vault. They need to use all their resources. And they go back like a couple days later, the entire place is immaculate.
Spick and span.
Like brand new.
Because Chet and Norm have seen what this place looked like. And like,
they've seen like bloody handprints on windows.
And it's funny because Norm's walking through it and he's like flashing back to what it did look like. You're getting like kind of like a flash back and forth.
Yeah.
And it's super effective because you've just basically had to absorb how completely fucked this place was to who did this?
Yeah.
How did this happen? How did this place get like perfectly immaculately cleaned up?
So now what we know is, and again, so what's really different about the vault setup here versus the vault setup we're all familiar with from the Fallout games is in the Fallout games, you got a vault and it's in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
And eventually you find another vault. In this, you have these 3 vaults that are connected by this like Y-shaped tunnel entrance, and they're all kind of together, but they're sealed off from each other, and they're mostly separate. So now we know what's in Vault 31 because all of our main characters, well, most of our main characters lived there, are from there, et cetera, et cetera. We know what was in Vault 32, and now we know what is in Vault 32, and it doesn't make any sense, but there's nothing from 31 that could have done that. So now the overarching mystery is what's going on in Vault 33. And the tease we start to get to that is when, again, as you do in a Fallout video game, when Norm starts going through all the computer records, one of the things he digs up is the results of all of their, and I believe Vault 32's overseer elections. And every overseer from Vault 31 and Vault 32 is a transplant from Vault 33.
That's right.
Including the overseer that they've just elected in a free and fair election.
A free and fair election where everyone shook hands afterwards and it all seemed fine because it was the most likable sort of like veteran leadership. My favorite is the scene where what's his name is just like I gotta vote for, I gotta vote for this. It's like, we need leadership at a time like this. And he's like, I'm gonna vote. He's like, I'm pretty sure you don't have to tell me who you're voting for. The 2 other guys who are running and they're just being told. And then even the guy who's running is just like, yeah,
I gotta vote for her too.
Just everybody votes for her instead. It's really funny.
And one of the things I will say, because again, I know I keep banging on this drum and it's probably not going to stop about like the pacing and everything in the show. One of the things that these scenes collectively do together really well is they give you the plant, but the payoff is a ways away. Like there's no rush to resolve this. So like you have something you can chew on without the episodes themselves being bereft of any kind of action or engagement. Like they do a really good job of, this is like the first mystery is, how did they get in here? Like, how long have they been in here? The second mystery is, who cleaned this up?
I was going to bring this up at the end, actually, with the pacing thing, but I'll just touch on it now and come back to it. The big problem with Mystery Box TV is the Lost dilemma, right? Where like you have interweaving stories and you cut back and forth between character POVs, but you never get enough satisfaction with at least 2 of the 3 POVs that keeps you coming back. And that was the problem with Mystery Box TV. This one gives you a payoff for every POV, every episode, so that you're still left with like, what could the implications of the payoff be, but you're satisfied with the overall like back and forth enough that you keep following.
They don't rush to the payoffs, but they also don't drag them out forever. Like, because you're talking about Lost. My big example of that done horribly wrong is most of The Walking Dead, right? Like the fact that you have all your plants in episode 1 of a season, and then like 15, 20 episodes later, you get your payoffs, and it's like, I just watch these people wander around. Like,
Atragon X just pointed out we got 33 and 31 mixed up. 31 is where all the
I'm sorry,
the overseers and stuff are coming from. 33 is where they're.
And I should know that because I've seen 8 million pictures of the back of Vault's Vault
Lucy's wearing 33. Yeah, it's okay. We're bad with odd numbers, guys.
So
we knew 32 was in the middle.
This whole double-digit vault thing. I haven't done that since Fallout 2. I don't know what's going on. I'm struggling.
It's weird seeing the Hollywood.
God, as long as we don't get to a single-digit vault by the end of this episode, I should be fine. So that is so this episode it's tons of world building, it's tons of scene setting, again with Norm and Chet. And I love the Norm and Chet partnership. Like Norm, Norm's gotten the actor who plays Norm has gotten a lot of love online for being like this kind of low-key star player in the show. But I gotta say, even though he doesn't do a lot of any great significance, I love the guy who plays Chet. Like he is the perfect kind of real world audience insertion reaction to all this crazy stuff going on.
He's got good underestimate me energy. Like they both have underestimate me energy in different ways, right? With Norm, it's the physicality. With Chet, it's the brains. And like seeing Norm sort of like picking at things feels natural, but then when he's actually brave in moments later on, you're like, oh no, he can actually be physically brave as well.
Oh,
the same thing with Chet, where it's like, oh, he's just this kind of galoot, it looks like, that's guarding the door. But then later on, where he's intellectually picking up on stuff, and you can see he's like emotionally intelligent. You get like, both these guys actually bring something to this that we didn't expect.
Absolutely. Like, and again, great organic character development, because you discover this over time. No one ever stares into the lens and delivers it for you.
Yeah, it's true.
No one stares off into the middle distance and says, man, that Chet guy seems a lot smarter than I thought he was.
And Norm found his courage, like the Cowardly Lion.
Yeah.
Like it's a bit Wizard of Ozzy, but again, they're playing the show don't tell, which is I think part of what makes the writing in the show so good. So while this is happening, and we have Norm being super suspicious, we also have Maximus and
Thaddeus having the best worst day of their lives.
The best worst day of their lives, yep. And then we have Thaddeus and Maximus's little thing where Thaddeus gets his foot destroyed, and we see later on how badly his foot gets destroyed. It is a whole lot. And then the crushing with it, but then takes out the fusion core and runs off. And so we have the moment now where we have another intersection between Lucy and Maximus, because Thaddeus is taken off with the head and the fusion core. And we have rad roaches start to pick apart all of the armor pieces with him trapped inside.
Yeah, like they're just crawling over his face visor. And it's interesting because I really enjoyed this and I thought it was well done. It was the one thing I saw a lot of people picking at online as not being very true to the games because, of course, as anybody who's played Fallout 4 knows, as soon as your fusion core is out, you just come out. Like that's the default setting.
Or you move super slowly. Like you're just muscling the armor around.
Basically. But I thought this was a nice change. Like it worked really well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people actually mentioned this in the last episode where I was talking about power armor training being a thing and that you don't Raiders wear power armor, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but at the same time, like you watch him struggle with the power armor. There is obviously a level of competence required to operate this. And that I feel like is an okay insertion into the lore of this version of Fallout.
Yeah, like when you see even in the first episode, like when you see Titus move in the power armor versus seeing Maximus move in the power armor, they can both work it. But Titus is smoother, and Titus is not Johnny Special Forces. Like he's a jagoff. But like he can move competently.
Yeah.
It's like if you've ever been on a job site where somebody's painting a ceiling, you can tell who's done that before and who just got on their painter stilts for the first time.
Yep. And so there's two things that are happening at the same time here. One, Lucy is dying of radiation poisoning because she's drank all that water that the ghoul had. The ghoul water, which wasn't great. And decides to trust Thaddeus decides to trust Maximus. Because Maximus is telling her, like,
each other again.
I can help you if you let me out of my armor. Yada yada. And at the bottom of it, reading through these overseer notes, we have Chet and Norm discover that it was Rose's overseer's code that opened the gate to let in the Raiders, which is a huge deal all of a sudden. And a message in the blood on the walls reads, "We know what's in there," which means that something to do with whatever happened in Vault 32 is associated with this, like this, and this is completely piquing Norm's distrust now, right? Where like someone they just elected as overseer is involved in the opening of the door, and also something to do with whatever the violence was in this vault has to do with this message. We know what's in there.
What's great is if you've ever seen one of those videos on YouTube where somebody's talking about like conspiracy theories that turned out to be true.
Yep.
This is kind of that moment where like Norm seems kind of like a paranoid conspiracy nut, and then you're like, oh no, he's just right. He's just right. When everybody's out, what's the expression? When everybody's out to get you, paranoia is just good thinking.
Yeah. And Rose obviously. So and Betty's the one that they've elected. Rose is Lucy's mom, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rose is Lucy's mom that opens the vault door, and Betty is the one that they just elected.
Yeah, Blind Al.
That's right. Yeah, Blind Al. That's right. Yeah, I forgot she's Blind Al. The cure for blindness and a kilo of cocaine
is buried somewhere in the floorboards. Maybe that's what they're going to find in Vault 31. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Maybe. So Lucy wakes up with Radaway hooked to her arm. Max is hiding his armor beneath metal and blankets, and the two of them decide to work together to retrieve Wilsig's head. She has the tracker, obviously, to find it, and in exchange, she wants to help from the Brotherhood in getting her father back. So she says, give me a few nights, and we'll go rescue my father.
We're still on the original quest.
We're still on the original quest. Yeah, we're back to it. Betty gets elected, because this happens, after, because Norm's discovered his mom basically has been the one that let people into the vault, and this weird message. Betty gets elected.
More importantly, not necessarily his mom. His mom's Pip-Boy.
His mom's Pip-Boy. Yeah, that's right. Her mom who disappeared. And everyone seems to be voting for Betty, even Reg.
Who's running against Betty.
Who's running against Betty, which is very funny. Yeah, that weird conversation in line. Lucy and Max walk along some railroad tracks, and she asks about the history of the surface over the last 200 years. And he mentioned something about bombs being dropped when he was a kid, alluding to that being more bombs after 2077. And Lucy seems to remember a time from with her mom in actual sunlight, but believes it was just nostalgia because she's been told that she always lives in the vault. She has this weird flashback where she kind of remembers being outside.
And in their vault, they have that one, the section where the cornfield is, where it projects a fake sky. But yeah, this is the moment where...
That seems like maybe it was something else.
Yes.
Yeah. Norm continues looking through the Vault 33 archives, and looks at all the people who've come from Vault 31 in trades. Nearly every single one who came from Vault 31 was elected to be overseer, including Hank and now Betty. The election results reveal Betty won with 98% of the votes. It's only 2% voted against.
Those are dictator levels of public approval.
Very strong public approval. Lucy and Max encounter dangerous-looking strangers on a bridge. Both parties say that they're unarmed, which is clearly a lie, and agree to let one another pass. The strangers attempt to ambush them, and Max takes them out. This is one of those moments where Max is hyper-competent all of a sudden, which I find very jarring and incredibly cool, because like he's such a numpty most of the time. And then all of a sudden, like when he has to pull the T60 pistol, he just blasts everybody.
This again is it's kind of like what we were talking about with Chet before, where you have this caricature picture in your head, this exaggerated view of what he's going to be like, but that's not what he's like. Like that is what is outwardly facing, but there is a little bit more to it than that, and it's rewarding. It's a good payoff.
Yeah, and I do love the character design for these two on the bridge too, because they're appropriately like scabrous would be the word I would use. They look like scabies.
They look like the Angel family from the first Judge Dredd movie.
They do absolutely look like that. Yeah, and then he goes and grabs their guns afterwards, which is I think is great. Like he basically retrieves their weapons, and now he's armed and feeling slick. Because doesn't he ask for her pistol at one point? He's like, "Give me the gun, give me the gun, give me the gun, give me the gun."
He does, because she has one and he doesn't.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then so he goes and retrieves a bunch of their weapons.
Now everybody has a gun.
And he's got a pipe pistol, which I thought was a cool piece of art design. He's got like an actual like shitty pipe pistol, because that's what these guys are armed with. Woody's disappointed in the results of the election, but he's told the old adage, if things are glum, vote for someone from Vault 31. And the social programming in Vault 33 is starting to like become apparent, which I thought was really interesting. It's subtle how indoctrinated they are to just be deferential to people from Vault 31.
I wonder why that is.
I find, but it's neat that like they never say that out loud. They're never like, no, you should just believe anyone from Vault 31.
Well, no, because again,
it's great over there.
When you get towards the end, you realize how intentional and why that's intentional. Yeah. But in this moment, you just know something's up.
Yeah. And then it lines up with what Norm found in the terminal, and he learned that the same thing happened in Vault 32, that they elected an overseer from 31. Chet thinks it's just a clever slogan, but Norm knows there's no way for 200 years of coincidence this to not mean something. Chet's still living with Stephanie and helping with the newborn baby. When Norm asks what the differences in Vault 31, all she can recall is that the mashed potatoes back home seemed better.
And just again, mashed potatoes this is another one of those seeds being planted that Stephanie is a bit weird.
Yep.
Right? Because the whole time she's been a little bit weird.
Yep.
She was one of the people that when they had the first fight in the first episode, right? Like she gets stabbed in the eye right off the hop, which is why she's wearing the eye patch for the rest of the time. But it does not impede her ability to fight and kill these raiders. She
is a murder machine. That's right.
So her
and also Dad.
Her and Kyle MacLachlan are the two characters that are wrecking shit.
And Norm has this weird flashback where he realizes his dad said the exact same thing. So she's now echoing something that his dad said whenever he be asked about it. Max and Lucy show up in the location where a town called Shady Sands used to be. Oh, so we've got our first Fallout 1.
Fallout friends.
Yeah, our first Fallout 1 reference here. Which 1 is fantastic, and 2 is going to be very important later on.
And is also a genuinely shocking moment, because what you don't expect to see is a sign where Shady Sands used to be.
And a giant crater.
Because if you're a Fallout fan, you expect to see Shady Sands.
And there's basically a nuclear bomb like sized hole in the ground where Shady Sands used to be. He tells her about the New California Republic and the cities that once existed after the war, and talks about how big it was 44,000 people or something like that, 50,000 people. And she's like, but Reclamation Day was supposed to be our thing. We were supposed to save the world. And she's like blown away that this didn't happen because of the vaults. And it's kind of making her question, like, is my whole life a lie? Is my whole life like not important if this was already something that was possible here in the wasteland? Shady Sands is a bustling town with more than 30,000 residents, but as Max says, things didn't work out. Shady Sands was bombed several years ago, and an enormous crater now sits at the heart of the city used to be. And Lucy asks what happened. The same thing that always happens, Max says. Everyone wants to save the world. They just disagree on how. This is my favorite line almost of the series. Because that feels like...
It's my favorite line until we get to the last episode.
Oh my God, it's fair, yeah. But it feels like it's very relatable to today. Max reveals that he survived the blast. He was just a kid, and he hid inside an old refrigerator, Indiana Jones style. Yep. He emerged and was found by Night of the Brotherhood. The older Maximus was shot in exchange with the friends, and he starts losing more blood than he let on. They start searching in an old medical lab for supplies, and they're dropped through a trap door. So this is our kind of like a moment where we see like how bad off right now Maximus is, because he's got that wing in his arm.
Yep.
And she mentioned earlier, she was like, I should tie that. He's like, I get shot all the time.
Yeah, he soft sold it. He no-sold it.
Yeah, he no-sold it. And now they've been dropped through a trapdoor and they're in some mysterious place. So interestingly enough, in Vault 33, Betty announces they're going to be renovating Vault 32. When the entire community of Vault 33 heads over to 32, it's completely changed now. And this is our moment where you see it's been all cleaned up.
I don't have to renovate that much. It looks nice.
And they're going to have a resettling campaign, and you're going to get a note on your Pip-Boy who goes and who doesn't go. And we have this big montage where like Pip-Boy notifications are like popping up next to everyone's head. And it feels like certain people are being picked to go to 32 and certain people are being left behind in 33.
Some people are problematic.
And they're going to 32. Yeah. And anybody who, I'm betting the 2% of different voters are the first ones that got notifications that they're going to 32.
And the other thing that they don't quite get to, but I feel like you can see coming, is the only person that's not problematic to the establishment in 33 that gets moved to 32 is Stephanie.
That's right. Yeah, which is strange. Great job cleaning up is what Norm says to Betty, because he knows the truth, which I think is very interesting. He asked what happened to his mom's Pip-Boy, and Betty says that she was buried with it. And that she buried Rose alongside with Hank so she would know. That's all the confirmation that Norm needs to know that there's a big lie going on surrounding the vault, because his mom's Pip-Boy was present when the door opened. Lucy and Max wake up in cots in a small intake room underground. They found themselves in another vault, which Lucy says fills her with hope. And she gets all excited because she sees the people there and that they're going to be safe now because there's other vault dwellers.
And all the vault dwellers she sees in this episode seem perfectly normal and perfectly healthy. And this is another not sinister vault.
Totally not sinister Vault 4. Yeah, Vault number 4. We're getting into the single digits now, which is weird, but I'm excited about these California vaults. They seem really cool. And then we get to episode 6. So this is our this is where we didn't get a lot of. So the only thing I didn't like about episode 5 so far is we didn't get almost any Walt Goggins. It's very, very Goggins-free episode.
However, some of the Walt Goggins we get, not even the Walt Goggins, the Walt Goggins adjacent. They've done all these winks and nods, right? To follow it, and then you've got the fridge in the Indiana Jones thing.
Yep.
But this is my favorite. Let's wink and nod to something else in the franchise.
So it's opening out right now. So why don't you lead with this one, the pre-war commercial that begins with Cooper introducing the idea of vaults.
So this is a huge payoff moment for Fallout fans who are fans of both the show and the games, which is Cooper is basically, he's at the butt end of his acting career.
Mm-hmm.
So now he's doing endorsements and ads. Like he's Tom Selleck doing reverse mortgage ads.
That's right. Yeah.
He's Peter Graves selling whatever the hell it was Peter Graves used to sell.
He's selling out so hard.
So he is going to be the spokesperson for Vault-Tec.
Yeah.
And his wife works for Vault-Tec, and this all makes perfect sense. But this is the moment where we get the iconic, he does the thumbs up thing. And then we have that realization that Cooper is basically the inspiration for Vault Boy. He's Vault Boy.
He's Vault Boy. He's been Vault Boy the whole time. The thumbs up comes from it. And it is such an iconic reveal that Walt Goggins is Vault Boy. It makes me so happy. And we have a big walkthrough of Vault 4 to tell people how they're going to be protected from both radiation and communists.
And we're also going to get, and we're getting another seed in this moment because we do that walkthrough. And they show the people in the commercial that he's with are a couple of the scientists that are going to be populating Vault 4, because Vault 4 will entirely be populated by scientists.
Yep.
And Vault 4 is the vault they just fell into.
So we have our basically plant and payoff right now. We know where Lucy and Maximus are, and we know that they're in the same vault that he's just toured around, and we know that vault is a science-tocracy. It's it's going to be governed by these scientists.
And again, it does look like it should be a proper above board shelter as opposed to any of Vault-Tec's weird experiments.
Yep. And this is where Cooper meets Bud Askins. And Buds, this is my favorite. We get one of the creepiest corporate interactions with Bud, because Bud is smiling a little too much and way too excited to meet Cooper and talking about how he's starting to say things that make Vault-Tec look a little bit strange. The way that he interacts, he's a bit unhinged.
For everybody watching this who has ever worked a job in a big company, where there is some guy in that big company that you're convinced might not be human under the skin. They might be a lizard person. They might be an android.
And Cooper knows him, because this is the guy that rolled out power armor in Alaska when he was fighting in Alaska. Because we know that Cooper is a veteran of fighting in Anchorage. and this makes him a little uneasy. And he asks what he's doing now, and he's like, "Oh, I mostly work in R&D because the way that we're going to beat our competitors in the future isn't to outsell them or outdevelop them; it's to outlive them."
Everything's great. Everything works great. What do you want this product to do? It does that. Everything is fantastic.
Time is the ultimate weapon, Bud says. The future of all humanity comes down to one word: management. And that is some creepy ass shit to hear from an employee in a company that you're now working for.
Yep.
There's moments, I mean, you and I have both worked for corporations before, and there are moments where you ask yourself, am I joining a cult?
Yes. It's a free haircut. What do you want?
Right, yeah. Is this a cult I just joined? I'm not sure if this is corporate culture talk or cult talk. He's having that moment that you and I have both experienced.
Yes.
It's like, I feel like maybe I've joined a cult.
So this is actually, and we've talked before about how some of the character stories, even when they don't intersect, they start to follow or parallel each other on the same paths. This is the first moment where Cooper's path, ironically, starts to parallel Norm's path.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because this is one of the great things about Cooper versus the Ghoul's character is we gain more empathy for the Ghoul and his actions over time because we see where he's come from and we see the perspective he must have versus all other protagonists who have a very different perspective.
So in the past, up until this point, and we kind of touched on this before, and we'll get to it more as we go through the last couple episodes, but Cooper has been a very classic. He's an ex-Marine, middle-aged, middle-class white actor in Hollywood in a very 50s Americana kind of setting. And he's bought into the whole American dream.
Yep.
And
he's lived it.
This is the first fracture in that.
Yeah, where he starts having to promote it. And he sees that what's underneath it might not be what he thinks it is. So he gets informed by his wife that he's going to have to host a party, a rap party for this shoot. That's going to be at their house. He didn't have any idea, and he's super not excited about it. He sees an ad of himself in the paper and shakes his head, and his beloved dog, Roosevelt, has to stay upstairs during the party. And you realize that Cooper has way more in common with his dog than he does with his wife's work friends.
Yes.
That's a very relatable moment for me.
And I will say, we haven't got to it yet, but in terms of the two, there's a second wink and a nod in this episode that I love. And it is when Cooper comes to the top of the staircase to come down to the party. He's a big Hollywood actor. There's a big poster up for one of his movies.
Yep.
And the name of that movie is A Man and His Dog.
Yeah.
Because A Boy and His Dog was one of the original post-apocalyptic movies that informs the look of this.
Yeah. If you ever want to see what's his name?
Don Johnson being 55 years ago.
With the weirdest, horniest whatchamacallit post-apocalyptic movie you've ever seen with a telepathic dog. Because it has to, you got a telepathic dog.
Have you seen movies that don't have telepathic dogs?
I have, but I didn't. I turned them off.
Okay, yeah, good.
Mostly just turned them off. And then he bumps into Sebastian, who voices the robot cartoon character Bartholomew Cogsworth. There's another shout out there with Cogsworth.
Yeah.
Because Cogsworth is your robot in Fallout 4.
Correct.
I believe.
Yeah, he's your Mr. Handy.
He's your Mr. Handy. And this is
the car, sir.
Yeah, the rights to his voice were purchased to use the actual robot voices in the cartoon, so all the Mr. Handy robots sound just like him. Sebastian is his only friend at this party, which they believe is because no one wants to be associated with the spokesperson for the end of the world.
and him and Sebastian have this great interchange where Sebastian is trying to give him a moment of clarity. And this is before it gets real deep with some of the political people afterwards. But his moment of clarity is people are products.
Yeah. And also that Cooper is now losing jobs in acting because of his association with Vault-Tec.
Yeah.
That the movie studios are now not calling him and he's not getting roles. And Cooper has to admit, that's where it's at right now. I keep calling my agent saying, why am I not working? It's well, because you're working, but you're working for people that the rest of Hollywood isn't super comfortable with now. You're working for the establishment, and that might be towing the party line, but it also makes everybody super uncomfortable.
Well, it's also back to your cult analogy, right? Because the whole idea is if you're in a cult, it seems perfectly normal. But to everybody outside the cult, they get that it's a cult.
And so their friend Charlie Whiteknife has apparently signed up as a communist and is attending regular meetings about it. Sebastian thinks that Cooper is moving the right direction with the Vault-Tec ads because the future is more about product than art. It's oh, Sebastian. But that makes sense because this guy's signed off his voice rights basically forever to.
Yeah, he's if you think
there.
about this in 2024, this is like those actors who basically decided, no, I'm signing away my AI rights so that when I'm gone,
my kids can have something.
You can use my likeness, my image. James Earl Jones did this with his voice
the Vader
for Darth
thing.
Vader.
Yep, the Vader thing. Which is why we'll have AI Vader now forever. And it's it's sad, but if you think about that as terms of what's my legacy, in the now for some people, it's like this is my pension basically that I'm going to.
And there's also a very practical parallel to
to today. So in the future, more than 2 years later, the ghoul version of Cooper is approached by several sheriff's deputies in the old Super Duper Mart. So he is now ruminating.
I'm going to have to stop you right here because this is my favorite moment in the whole episode.
Okay.
He's not approached by several sheriff's deputies. He's approached by a leader in a white suit and 2 sheriff's deputies.
Okay, so he's approached by Boss Hogg.
And the name of that guy in the white suit, the name of the character is Sorrel Booker. And the name of the actor who played Boss Hogg is Sorrel Brooks.
Yeah. So we know exactly what this is a nod to.
I love everything about this.
He's basically one of the Duke boys sitting watching.
He's one of the Duke boys.
And he's watching his old movies and has a hat full of drugs, which I think is fantastic. He's got so many drugs because he's basically taken the leavings that Lucy has left behind from Super Duper Mart. He's arrested for supposedly destroying their medical business that was being run at the store. So this like ghoul organ farm that they were running,
the boar's nest,
is the boar's nest.
It's the boar's nest.
It's basically the boar's nest. There's so much like blink if you miss it.
I love everything about
and the fact
this.
That this is a big Dukes of Hazzard gaff, I think, is fantastic. So then we flip back to Lucy and Max, and they are in Vault 4 being patched up. And the reason Max is going septic is you discover that it's a human tooth he's been shot with. That the pipe rifle was loaded with human teeth for bullets. Madness. They inform him to stay for a short time while he recovers. The Vault Forgers actually found Max's armor and are bringing it back to him.
And they all do genuinely seem very nice. Normal. They seem very helpful.
Yeah, they seem very cool. Lucy's instantly at ease and is like chill with.
Because this is what the world is supposed to be like.
Yeah, it's supposed to be helpful, happy Vault dwellers getting ready for Reclamation Day. One of the prominent leaders of the Vault, Birdie, tells Lucy that she's actually born on the surface and lived in Shady Sands before the bottom. And as they wait in a holding area, Lucy has the cringiest moment. Says that she wants to have sex, and we realize that sex ed in the wasteland is not great. And Maximus has no idea what she's talking about.
Our closest parallel to this in any other media would be the take on sex in Demolition Man.
Yeah. Where she's basically Sly Stallone, and he is the Sandy Bullock of this interaction.
Yes.
Has this weird interaction.
I heard it swells up and then pops like a pimple.
That's right. And he's like, and she mentions like, well, just cousin stuff. Like, it's so funny because obviously the take on this is like, it's funny how it addresses sex in the wasteland in like this disarms all thoughts of how this goes kind of way possible, because they're both just mutants basically when it comes to understanding what this stuff is. She encourages that he's not as clueless as he thinks, but he still doesn't think he should be part of the Brotherhood, and they aren't supposed to. The response seems to bother her. Doesn't seem to bother too much. She's just cool that she's just relaxed now. At breakfast, they're introduced to Overseer Benjamin, my favorite Chris Parnell role maybe ever as the Cyclops.
Are we discounting Archer?
I mean, he's great in Archer, but this is also pretty fantastic. He did some good bits inside Our Life, I guess, as well. He tells them that one of the only major rules is to stay at level 12. Lucy looks around to see that other people have strange deformities and extra body parts, like a man with a second nose on his forehead, or someone with fins for hands, and another woman has glowing blue eyes.
And his Cyclops makeup is great because the trend in that is to do like a huge oversized eye to call it out, and they do the exact opposite, which is they give him one normal sized eye.
He's tiny face from Dick Tracy.
Yeah,
he's little face from Dick Tracy. It's just normal, but it's in the middle of his head. It's incredible. And so then we flip back to the ghoul basically, and he is walking through the desert with the deputies. He's reminded of a conversation of his wife before the bombs. He asks her about doing work somewhere other than Vault-Tec. He dreams of both them quitting and moving out into the mountains, purchasing a farm where the pig can survive together and be disconnected from it all. And the news lately has him second guessing city life because he doesn't want to live in the city if like things are as bad with the
bombs are coming.
Barb checks on her new pit boy, and she informs Cooper that Bud Askins licensed them from Robco to integrate with technology in the vault. So we have this interesting thing where we have Robco references now, who make the Mr. Handy and who make the Protectron and all that stuff. And they're like, why is there a Robco device in Vault-Tec like life? And this is just like a throwaway kind of thing, but it's a cool bit of like exposition. She doesn't love all the men like Bob Askins that she works for, but she knows the job is her way to guarantee the safety and longevity for their family, specifically their daughter, in one of the vaults. She admits that all the money in the world won't get them to a spot in one of the good vaults, and only a high-level job in Vault-Tec.
And the way she says the good vaults,
so friggin' terrifying.
It's not the way you say the good McDonald's in the town you live
like,
in.
we're gonna go to the good Denny's, not the bad Denny's. We're gonna go to the good Denny's.
There is an implication that there is good and there is bad and there is no gray in between.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, still in the past, Cooper runs into Charlie Whiteknife at a bar, and they were together in Anchorage. That's how they know each other. They were vets together. And he rips Charlie about his work with the communism, and Charlie tells him that a company like Vault-Tec is the real danger to humanity. They have responsibility to their shareholders, which means selling vaults above everything else. If peace negotiations with rival countries succeed, they won't be able to sell vaults anymore. So nuclear war is ultimately good for business. Vault-Tec's currently more powerful than the U.S. government, which is a dangerous thing unless the people can do something about it. And he gives Cooper a card and tells him to come to one of the meetings and learn the truth about Barb's employer. So we realize that, like, the communist label that's being given to this organization that Whiteknife's a part of maybe doesn't apply. They might not actually be communists. They might actually just be some kind of revolutionary that's like anti-Vault.
And we come back to that when he meets the head of the group.
Exactly. They're activists, not necessarily communists. Yeah. So back home, Coop gets a call from Henry, Barb's new assistant at work. He hangs up the phone, and you realize Henry's a interesting name for someone to have.
Yeah. What would your nickname be if your name was Henry?
If you were a venture brother, what would a venture brother be called if they were a Henry? He hangs up the phone because they don't take work calls in the evenings, and Barb informs them that they'll need to leave Roosevelt behind if the bombs fall because a policy's been put into place not allowing dogs in the vaults. They are an avoidable inefficiency is what they're called, and this kind of bums Coop out. He wants to know who made the decision to introduce that policy, and he pushes about more information regarding who's making the rules regarding the vaults.
So he's
starting to question. This is his norm moment.
This is actually the thing that I think pushes him over the tipping point to checking out the other group, right? Yeah. Because up until that point, he's still living, even though he's suspicious, he's living in his 50s Americana.
Classic, fantastic.
Everything is good.
Yep.
And as soon as they're like, yeah, you can't have your dog if everything goes wrong.
Was this even America if I don't have my dog?
Yeah.
Like, why would I live without my dog? I'd rather just die with my dog. You can take my dog for my cold, dead fingers.
Yeah, exactly.
And so he decides to go and check them out. I want to know about my freedom. I don't go to war defending that freedom so I could live in a cellar under the boot heel of Chairman Bud Askins, which I think is fantastic.
Great line.
He loves America, but he hates Bud Askins. He just hates that guy. Not just because it's funny. The one thing I wish they'd done here to make that get driven home a bit more is if they'd shown us Coop in Anchorage. If they'd had, like, we've never gotten to see his military service or had any references to Anchorage. Maybe we'll get that in season 2.
Yeah, I was going to say, that feels like something that you would keep in your back pocket because it's not germane to the main story.
It isn't, but the relationship between he and Bud could develop maybe more in season 2. And I'd love to see more of why he instantly dislikes seeing Bud.
I know we talked about doing a final episode speculating, but I think what I would really like to see is I would like to see a flashback to his service in Anchorage where he sees things that he should be suspicious of and isn't.
And ignores them, exactly. Yeah. And that Bud showing up later on is the thing that, like, tips him over the edge. Because I feel like there's more there as to why he's suspicious, which would be interesting to know in the future. So she persists that everything will be okay for their family. She'll sacrifice her freedom to have a dog if it means Janie surviving a nuclear apocalypse. So it's like, I don't want to be having a dog if our daughter can live. She's worked it out from them to live in a vault set aside for upper management, where they will have a hand in overseeing all the other vaults. Back in present day, Lucy chats with Overseer Ben about life in the vaults. We have that great moment where, like, he doesn't know that some of his coffees are moldy. There's, like, this weird, like, maybe not everything's okay here moment. I do love all of the Chris Parnell moments because he's just such a mutant. I don't mean that from the point of view of he has, like, 2-lensed glasses with one eye. Like, why does he have?
I love the fact that there are 2 lenses, but neither of them is where his eye is.
He's looking through the bridge of it. Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. He's, like, looking over it half the time. It's very funny. Ben doesn't necessarily want to take in people from the service, but it's just a policy that was adopted long before he was in charge. So she asks, like, why are some of these people from Shady Sands? And he's like, it's just the thing we do.
But now this is her Cooper moment, because obviously she's seen all these people that are mutants.
Yep.
And I think her assumption to this point has been, well, those are the people from the surface.
Yep.
And now you have this Cyclops basically kind of being racist about, or xenophobic, however you want to call it.
About normies.
About the people from the surface. And that's her moment where she's like, wait a minute. He's not from the surface.
That's right. And it's the people that have the mutations and the weird deformities, the ones that are obviously from down here.
Yes.
Also, we did get a pan back to the triage room, which we forgot to mention when they're being treated, that says test subjects on it.
Yes.
And no one ever really seems to notice that it's not a triage room. It's not like a medical center, that this is like where the test subjects come from.
I wonder what they're testing.
Wonder what they could be testing.
I wonder what they're testing.
So she asks about what's on level 12, and he immediately kicks her out of the office. Just shuts down, becomes a totally different person, is like, you're asking too many questions, get out of here. Max gets his armor back and knows he needs a fusion core to power it. He looks into the power supply for Vault 4 and realizes that the entire building also runs in the same type of power core. So he could steal a power core from here if he needed to. Bertie talks to them and encourages him to give life to the vault a chance because he's never been down here before. She gives him a Pip-Boy so he can unlock a private room, have a hot shower, and get a good night's sleep in a bed. And the comfort and kindness at first makes Mac like freak out. He's like, what is happening? Like, why is you can tell he's waiting for something to go wrong.
He goes into the room, and when he goes into the room at first, like he's almost got that, like that, that weird stance where you're like, you're looking for something.
He's gonna run.
And I think the fruit basket and the bathrobe are the moments where he's like, nope, it's all fine.
I'm gonna take advantage of this. And then he just gets into like a Kevin McAllister Home Alone montage of like, I'm gonna watch TV and eat cereal and like be in a bathrobe and take a shower. And this is amazing.
Everything about this is fantastic.
Yeah. Lucy's still exploring. She checks out a classroom in Vault 4 that acts as a tribute to Shady Sands. She learns about the founding of the new California Republic and how there's been a lot of life on the surface since the bombs. All the people from the surface are heading to take part in some kind of a tradition that their people have, and Lucy's invited to tag along. So, again, we have this moment where, like, Maximus is getting more comfortable, Lucy is getting more uncomfortable.
And this is another weird character moment for Parnell's character.
Yeah.
Because Parnell's character is the most over-the-top, genuinely nice-seeming, like even when he throws her out of the office, he's nice about it. He just tells her she's got to leave.
You got to go now. I'm all done. I'm shutting this down.
But he's very nice, except for, again, when he displays his racism and xenophobia towards the people from above. Because when she talks to him about, oh, well, what's the thing? He's like, I don't know, it's some weird cultural thing, but you got to be sensitive about people's cultures. Like,
yeah, he's not okay with it. It's very funny. He's acting like a guy who's been in way too many sensitivity training meetings, and he's just like, I know I'm the reason these keep happening. he's the reason that all this is being called into this room, and HR is here. So President Booker says that the ghoul. Oh, sorry, we'll go back to the ghoul. So and as they walk in, like they're kind of processionaling, which is a bit weird. It gets a little, I don't know. They're going into a big main room. We don't see what happens immediately, but it does feel like there's a almost religious significance to this walk. Back on the surface, the ghoul is led to a building labeled the Government, M-I-N-T. He meets with some self-appointed president of the area who actually happens to know him from a time in the past. President Booker says that the ghoul was the best bounty hunter in the wasteland for a time. He sews his finger back on as Booker talks to him about the search for Moldaver. Booker says she's dangerous and that people refer to her as the Flame Mother. So this is very funny. This is the person that Lucy's looking for because they kidnapped her dad. And that she has like a weird title now as the Flame Mother. He saw an opportunity for power and attempted to seize it. He needs to punish the ghoul because the super duper mark was under his protection, and handing down a sentence will keep some semblance of order. The ghoul kills the deputies and notices a water poster on the wall for Moldaver's picture. And Booker tells him that the woman depicted as Moldaver. The ghoul says, "That's not how I remember." And so we're getting this full circle moment where we realize that Moldaver is someone from the ghoul's past.
Yeah.
And that maybe the stakes here for him are different than just collecting a bounty, and that knowing who this is has now raised them for him a whole bunch. Back in the past, Cooper pulls up to the Hollywood Cemetery for the secret meeting that Charlie invited him to. His time exploring the meeting cuts between Lucy exploring the service gathering of Vault 4. So we cut back basically to him arriving there, and he's going to have that meeting as like the end point of that interaction with Booker. So now the whole meeting, I guess religious ceremony happening in Vault 4 immediately goes off the rails. Everyone gets naked, covers themselves with blood.
It's the rave scene from the second Matrix movie. Like it's just
it's the beginning of Blade.
Yeah.
Like it gets very, very weird very fast. And Lucy is instantly uncomfortable. And we get a real flip moment where she's like, this is not.
Well, it's funny because basically
Vault.
they all strip naked, more or less.
Yep.
And she's kind of like, oh, well, not for me, but okay. Like she's not uncomfortable with that. And then they're putting these ashes on their faces. And that's when one of them tells her, yeah, those are the ashes of the people from Shady Sands.
Yep. And there's a weird ass giant like candle covered thing in the middle of the table or in the middle of the room. It's covered in bowls of fire and recites a message of the Flame Mother: bring back the past as we remember. They all dip their fingers in their foreheads and wipe all of themselves, and it's basically the people to bring back Shady Sands. Blood must spill is the message. Another bowl is passed around with this one filled with blood that the people drink from. And then a bright red banner is raised depicting Moldaver as the Flame Mother, the savior of the surface world. And we realize that, oh my God, Shady Sands at one point was led by this person that Lucy is trying to find.
That up until now, we are 99% sure is the main villain of the story.
Yeah, and it's like, it seems like a raider. Is like the leader of the raiders, basically, that stole Hank. Cooper finds Charlie and says that he may not stick around, but Charlie is confident that he will. As they want to join the meeting, Cooper is introduced to the leader of the meeting, who we recognize instantly as being Moldaver. So we've gone full circle. This person is also from the past and is somehow now 219 years later. And this is why we think Cooper is hunting her, because she's the leader of whatever this agitation group is in the past that's trying to take down Vault-Tec. That also just broke 219 years later into Vault-Tec and kidnapped Lucy's dad. Lucy tries to convince Max that they need to leave immediately, but he's now had the opposite experience where he wants to stay because he's like...
The two of them have flipped.
Yeah.
He's like, no, the vault's normal.
This
the
place
vault
is great, man. I eat cereal, I'm wearing a bathrobe. This is awesome. He's enjoying all the comforts. She heads down to vault level 12 and decides to... She has her Norm moment. This is where we see that they are very brother and sister, and her inquisitiveness coupled with her bravery means she's going to go against whatever's supposed to happen. And she discovers all sorts of remnants, including possibly the most disturbing holotape video of all time. Oh my God. This show occasionally is goofy. It occasionally is bright and cheery. This lab moment scene has the most horrifying shit we've seen in this.
So one, it's horrifying. Two, it ties back to earlier in the episode because the person on the video is the guy from the commercial with Cooper.
Yep.
So it's from when the vault was originally founded.
The scientist in charge of a vault.
The scientist in charge of the vault. And the third thing is, this is, do I give the reveal or is that fall into the next episode? I can't remember. Next episode. Okay, so I'll hold on to that. But when you realize what the research they're leading to is, and again, if you haven't watched it yet, but if you're a fan of the games and trying to figure out what's been missing so far, this is it.
Holy shit. So the video is footage of a woman in a tank giving birth to a bunch of gecko nudie things, and they immediately turn back and try and eat her. In another room, she finds more pregnant women in cryogenic tubes, all being kept alive. And a scientist comes down to check on the subjects and hears Lucy crawling around. An alarm sounded, and he comes after her with a harpoon gun, a giant-ass harpoon gun, which is like, why would you need this down here? She almost gets away, throwing acid in the face of the scientist, until she's apprehended by Birdie and a slew of other members of the vault. Meanwhile, Max continues to just sit around in his bathrobe watching the video of the waterfall.
No idea anything's going on.
With not a care in the world. And this is where episode 6 ends, basically, with the horror show reveal that this was not one of the good vaults.
No.
So we've got this episode has a bunch. So we'll do like a quick recap of this episode. Then we'll do the tie together of the two episodes together. This is the episode where we get, I think, if the Super Duper Mark was the most side quest reveal thing, this is the most for a casual viewer that's never heard of Vault before, that we start to realize what this dystopia, this future apocalyptic dystopia is and whose fault it is. And it's revealed that the real villain here is definitely Vault-Tec.
And it's interesting because up until now, there's been dark moments and everything, but it's been very much presented as a very fun apocalypse, which I know sounds stupid, but that's kind of the visual, the aesthetic, all that. And this is between Cooper's reveals in the past and Lucy's reveals in the present. This is where you realize certain parts of it might be artificially cheery, again, a la Stepford Wives. Yeah. But man, this is not a nice apocalypse.
No, this is not a nice apocalypse. And also, we've now got a direct through line from Cooper's timeline 200 years in the past into today, and we see who these major players are, and that something vast and conspiratorial happened that left the world this way. From the comments that Bud makes about management and outliving the future and selling vaults, to this agitator group being labeled communists that Cooper is now interacting with, and realizing that Moldaver is the leader of this group and still exists.
And I gotta say, I know I can't spoil it until we get to episode 8. It's not the line that I was talking about earlier, but man, I gotta practice my Walt Goggins, because when we get to episode 8, he has one of my favorite lines in the whole series.
Yeah. And like, again, so we'll come back to like now these two together. What great pacing this show has, dripping out the past, present, and like bits of like what's going to be coming in the future to the audience, where we've had plant and payoffs now from the first episode of who Cooper is to us in the first episode to who Cooper is to us now, being Vault Boy, being the proponent of all this Vault stuff. And that slow roll exposition where we realize that this savior corporation that has kept Lucy alive basically for 200 years and caused her to exist is probably also the reason why the world ended. That is a powerful statement, and it's taken us 6 episodes to get there. The mystery box is almost open, right, on who all these main characters are and who these protagonists are. And we've also seen at the same time, for Fallout fans, how the world with the NCR ended up the way it is, what happened to Shady Sands. We don't know why yet, but like we know why this world is slightly different from what we think the new California Republic in California should be like. And it feels great. Every episode's satisfying. Every episode gets a payoff from not just a previous episode, but also from that episode inside of itself. And you're never left feeling like dissatisfied with any of the 3 protagonists like arcs. No. So I love my favorite probably from this one is we know more about Maximus's trauma now and why he is the way he is, that he was a Shady Sand survivor that got lifted by the Brotherhood into a different life. We also see what could have happened, that Shady Sand survivors could have ended up in Vault 4. And to me, that's why he immediately gravitates to Vault 4, when he realizes these are other people from where he used to live. My one surprise, though, is how come he didn't know anybody?
You would assume he wouldn't remember anybody. Like he was
pretty young,
little,
right?
Little. So even if you think about it, if you ran into somebody today that was 8 years old the last time you saw him, and you were 8 years old the last time you saw him, they're not going to look or sound the same.
That's true.
So I kind of get it.
It would have been cool. I mean, and there's 30,000 people-ish in Shady Sands at that point. It's a huge community, so maybe you just didn't bump into somebody. But there's enough Vault 4 people downstairs. Like, why didn't you remember Moldaver? I guess he hasn't seen Moldaver yet.
No, to be fair, no, he has not.
He's the one who doesn't know what she looks like and doesn't know that she exists.
Even by the end, I don't think he sees her, if I remember right. If I remember the
sequence. Oh, no, he definitely sees her. He definitely sees her at the end. He definitely sees her.
I'm trying to remember what he's there for and what he's not.
No, he's definitely there at the end.
Okay.
Sure. I'm pretty sure. But we'll see. Anyway. So there it is. Episodes 6 and 7.
5 and 6.
5 and 6. 5 and 6. And what great episodes they were. We got another Vault. We got the reveal that like the actual like Vault-Tec conspiracy is a real thing and that Norm and Lucy aren't crazy.
Nope.
We got tons of like sympathy for Cooper's situation and understanding of who he is. Also why he is such an immaculate badass, that like he has been fighting in wars since Anchorage, which is like 2057 or something like that. Like he's like a 20 something in Anchorage, and he's 40 something by the time he's in Hollywood being an actor. So,
yeah, he's been shooting people for 250 years.
A long time this guy's been shooting people. And yeah, I loved every minute of it. I thought these were 2 great episodes.
Yeah, no, I thought they were really good too. I thought, it's funny, I keep talking about the structure of the show. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that can be very difficult is when something has been very successful, there's a tendency to copy it. And you don't think about it, but right, like after the first Matrix movie came out, there was bullet time and everything, right?
Yeah. And everybody did bullet time for a while too.
Right. But one of the things that's become a popular narrative tool is to have flashbacks and then to pay them off down the road.
Yeah.
And this show does that, but it also kind of flips it a little bit, because as the episodes progress, there's more and more flashbacks and less payoff to previous flashbacks. Yeah. So what's awesome about it is by the time you get to the end of the 8 episode run, everything's going to tie together and make sense. It's very Usual Suspects that way, but they do that by continuing to build lore. They're not racing to the end of the story.
No, they're definitely not.
Which is, in addition to the show's actual quality, I think it's why people were so hungry for a second season. Yeah.
And they got instantly greenlit, which is very funny. Sweet. So we'll be back with our final installment of this series until we get to season 2, which is going to be episodes 7 and 8. And there's lots of payoff in those ones. So tune back in for that one next week. So thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun.
See you guys for more Fallout. I'm hoping we get to follow this up with a bunch of Fallout gameplay, because there's going to be coming a time in about a month and a half when this game should be out for Modifius for us to do a bunch of miniature stuff like related to it, which should be fun. So yeah, back next week. Bye, everybody.